welcome back, everybody, to the Primas Podcast. I am Cindy, and that's Jess. Are you on this side?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Hey, Prima. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in. How's it going?
It's going great. I'm glad you asked. Everything's going great. Everything.
I know. Things are finally aligning. I love it. Awesome.
Yeah. So as you all can see, we have 3 boxes on the screen, and that's because we have a very special guest today. He's a male, the first male in our 3rd season. That sounds a little weird, but I bring that up because we wanted a male's perspective. And in the past, we talk a lot. We've had male guests before, mostly my brothers, which I'm very thankful for, but we always had to beg them to come on. And Rudy. And so for this season, we wanted to be intentional about having speakers that can come on, jump on, kind of like the topics that we talk about with psychology, mental health, healing. But we wanted to hear it from a male's perspective because we're solutions-based. We kind of throw that out there a lot because we do want to get to the solutions. Even though we don't have the answers, we try to get to the solutions. And so, yeah, we wanted a male's perspective. And Alex was super cool enough to come on and give us that perspective. So Alex, welcome.
Thank you. I thought that was after post effects, but that's pretty neat. All right. No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I didn't realize that I was I didn't infiltrate your feminine perspective, but I'm happy to share my perspective with anything, really. Mental health. I've worked in the field for going on like 7 years now. I've worked in early childhood education for a couple of years. So maybe about 10 years or so, I've been working in professionally where I'm helping people, helping families, helping children. And right now I kind of work more into a quality assurance position for a nonprofit that works in mental health. So I have a lot of trainings, and I know you guys mentioned you guys are in the field, and you take all these trainings, all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, like now it makes sense, right? And I've done that for 10 years,
Wow.
I was just like, oh, this is making sense. So I was like, just taking all this stuff in and always trying to apply it to myself, not really applying it to myself until I actually figured out there's many different ways to heal and to do this work. But that's what I'm here to talk about, because 2 years ago, I was not this person. I was like a scared little child. I kind of, you look at the inner child and all the trauma that people experience through childhood, and discovering that about myself and then finding tools that work for me has really helped. So I'm happy to share it. There's a lot, but anywhere you guys want to go with it, I'm open.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the Primas Podcast, and thank you for your time and your words that we're gonna talk about.
Alex, I have a quick question. Where do you reside? Because I was telling Jess earlier, and I was like, I know it's California.
In Covina, California.
Oh.
Southern California.
Nice.
Nice. Shout out to Tia Leti. She used to live in Covina or West Covina.
No, Covina.
Okay, yeah, something like that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jessica, you get those stuff all the time. Just kidding. Wait, Margarita Jones is in West Covina, right? Remember?
Oh,
that's the reason why I knew it was like. Did you ever go, Alex? Did you ever partake?
No, Margarita Jones sounds like a place you want to forget about, though.
Yeah, we
definitely.
Sure did. It was hardcore in our ratchet days. That was one of our spots.
It was 18 and over. And one time, sorry, I go off a little bit, but my best friend, I was already 21, but she didn't turn 21 until whatever. The point is, I went there and I was already 21, and I was like, ew, like I can't. I was just like, I can't. We can't go to 18 and over clubs anymore. But anyway, so that's cool, Covina. That's awesome. We're gonna jump right into it. Before we start, I do want to remind you all that we had an episode, I don't know if it was season 1 or 2, but please check it out, where it's called It's Okay to Cry. And we bring up how in little boys, especially in our culture, they're told from the jump, even though crying is like a evolutionary survival need as babies, we're supposed to cry when we're children, and even it's a regular human reaction. Mm-hmm. But boys are told to suppress that, right? Especially when I say our culture, I mean in the Latino culture. I'm sure there's other cultures that function the same, but we're talking from the perspective that we grew up in. And so, Yeah. So Alex has, some posts on his Instagram. Is it okay if I share, Alex, your Instagram?
Yeah.
So follow him. He's at Yo Soy Alex Flow. So it's YOSOY Alex FLO. I'll leave it on the description. And so you're very vulnerable, and we don't get to see that often in our culture, men in general. And so I think that's a beautiful thing that you share a lot of what your process has been. And so I kind of wanted to start there. I wanted to start in your childhood trauma, because in one of the videos, you said that you were an angry kid who got into a lot of fist fights. Yes. And so
let's unpack that.
Yeah. So, ever since I can remember, I remember thinking things were not okay. Like, I grew up witnessing a lot of violence. I grew up, being spanked, and probably spanked a little more than a child should be. Actually, a child should never be spanked. But, and we normalize this, and as a male, as the only son to my mom, who have 3 older sisters, and a stepdad who raised me since I was 5, I was kind of the golden child, I guess, because I was the son. So I was baby, but at the same time, I couldn't be a baby. I couldn't cry, right? So I was fucking messing with my head. So I was just angry a lot. Like, I was angry because I was not able to cry, because my dad was like, well, someone's not good, and it was just toughen up, or you're too sensitive, or my sister's teasing me. And so that early on, I just recognized, because of the world around me, just like witnessing so much violence, witnessing domestic violence, being like hit as a child, when like, why is this adult losing their cool on something so trivial, and then beating me for it, like thinking all these things. And so eventually what happened is I just stopped being sensitive. I bottled it up. I wasn't allowed to cry. I was being told I was too sensitive. And I was a very sensitive kid. I mean, I wasn't a very sensitive kid. I was a child. Child, super sensitive. So I just kind of decided to fight back. And I know you guys talk often about like trauma responses, and you have like freeze, fight, flight, and fawn. So I got stuck in fight my whole life, because that was a survival mechanism. I also was raised by a Latina single mom. It's funny because she calls herself a single mom, but I remember having a stepdad since I was 5 or 6. So like, my mom was always like, I'm a single mom, because she raised me for those first couple of years, right? But I remember the fight in her. Like, the fight in her was vicious, but it was also very loving and caring, if that makes any messed up sense of the world, right?
Yeah.
So it just was inconsistent, right? So I just didn't know if I was coming home to a mom that was going to be very loving and supportive, or a mom that was really overly stressed because she's working 2 jobs, taking a bus through LA, picking up her, kids on the bus, bringing them back, and then like stress, grown stress. And I just happened to be, me and my sisters happened to be sometimes the outlet of that stress. So I decided to fight back. So as a child, when they would hit me, I would fight back. And I just did that. At some point, I stopped with my mom and stuff. But like, I've had uncles that would like, talk shit to me and like tell me stuff. And as a 12-year-old kid, I would swing on them. And I was kicked out of many schools for fist fighting. But growing up, it was funny because I always got into fights, but I always fought bullies. I always wanted to fight the guys that made fun of people, the guys that hurt people, because I always just thought it was such a wrong thing to do. Like, no, don't do that. So I've always had this fight in me. It's a good thing if you can control it, channel it, whatever you want to call it. But when you're a misguided youth, you really fall into things that are unattractive, or very attractive, but not safe. So I fell into like, just not the best crowd and stuff. And when some of my friends started going like a little deeper into the, stuff, I was like, no, it's not really my thing. And I decided to part ways. But I had these coping strategies so ingrained inside me. But when you're 18 and you're 19 and you're 20, you can't fight. You can't punch people. You can't do it. It doesn't work, right? You can't just walk up and solve problems by punching people. So I kind of just decided to suppress this anger, because I couldn't release it, And because of my life, I look back at it and everything kind of played out perfectly. I wouldn't change anything. I've always found ways to cope without even knowing. I always was drawn to very, very aggressive sports, combat sports, very like hobbies that really took a toll on my body, that gave me a release of this anger and aggression that I once held,
So you would say like those sports were like a healthy outlet for you?
Yeah, in my 20s.
Like without like subconsciously you knowing it, but like self-reflecting back, you're like, oh shit, like that actually made me, feel a little bit better after I released that anger in me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I trained in like MMA back in like 2005, 2006. And I did that as a young 20-year-old that was just trying to do something cool. But at the same time, like that's probably what kept me from like falling off the deep end and suicide. Like, I mean, I was suicidal my whole life, and I'm very open about that. But even in those times, I can't remember feeling that way when I was very active. Because it gave me something to do. It released all the endorphins. It goes, physiologically, it makes me, feel up and more active and aware. So it's funny because I look back in my life and I always had these moments where I dove into these really intense hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I would dive into them and then I would like, fizzle out because I also get very, I used to, not so much anymore. I used to get very like obsessed with what I'm doing. And that's kind of like I think a characteristic of someone that kind of survived trauma, because I have to constantly be on. I have to constantly be like in a state of fight in order to feel normal. So, I was like diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed with all the depression, anxiety and stuff. And like all through 20s to 30s, I saw counselors. And it wasn't like the first time I saw counselors pretty much like since I was like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But like around my 20s and 30s was when I was like, I'm going to change. I'm going to do something about it. Right. And it really didn't work for me. I mean, it worked in the sense it taught me a lot. And eventually I look back and I go, oh, now it makes sense. But it just talk therapy, CBT, all that stuff didn't work for me. It's just like my trauma was so deeply rooted and I didn't know at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I was always the type of person like, yeah, I got beat, but I deserved it. I was a knucklehead, yeah, like my mom loves me. My mom would do anything for me and she would. And she's the most amazing, loving woman. But in her upbringing of me, she didn't really have the best tools to deal with some of the challenges that she was facing. And I have total forgiveness of her, and she's an amazing woman and she's on her own healing journey. So I know I'm very lucky in the sense I can be vulnerable like that because my mom is along for this healing journey, which I'm very blessed to have that. Some parents are just like, I didn't do shit. Like I could have beat you even more, or I got it even worse, My mom is very empathetic.
That's awesome. And yeah, Alex, you described so many men in not only my family, but friends I've known and like growing up, like these characteristics are just normalized. And it's so sad, like I want to help them. I want to be like, oh, well, don't worry. Like, I'll love you unconditionally, but it doesn't work like that. You have to do the healing. And I like the word Georgina uses, like honor. You have to honor yourself. And if you can't do it or find it within you, then we're not going to heal. Right. And yeah. I'm barely on that journey, but like we're breaking down this construct of like males in our society, and it's like from the beginning, they're like push and grind it down to see like, oh, well, the strongest survive and all these like metaphors, but it's just like, no, they're humans just like women. They have emotions. And I'll never forget like that psychology, the emotions of psychology, and that class like changed my perspective on like how we need these emotions to survive, but yet we're telling half our population don't feel them.
Yeah.
Don't honor them.
Yeah, it's definitely it's mixed messages. I mean, as a man, we grew up hearing one thing, and I am okay enough to say, yeah, I was part of that. I was part of that guy that looked at all kinds of porn and thought that was reality. And you have these guys like, no, I'm better than that. No, I just look at porn a little bit. I'm not anti-porn, but it's like I'm okay saying, yeah, I was like, you can't tell a 9, a 10, a 12, a 13, a 14-year-old kid that gets introduced to this stuff that even though that's not reality, that it's still not affecting their expectations of what the world's going to be, especially what women are going to be. And growing up with like 3 sisters, a single mother, but now I look back, I'm like, no, my mom had it the whole time. She just liked it. So she liked that. She's a powerful woman. But like I have a different perspective, and I look back, I'm like, shit, like I was part of like perpetuating that violence against women, even in the sense where it's just like I had this expectation. And I can say this stuff and it'll make people super uncomfortable, but it doesn't make me uncomfortable. And I know there's a lot of power in that because I can look at someone and say that and they're like, oh, no, man, stop talking. I'm like, I'm totally comfortable in myself. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you can do 2 things. You can ignore it, push it down, or you can face it. And I learned how to face it. But I learned how to face it after 10 years of a lot of training and 10 years of counseling, and I have a master's degree in early childhood education with like an emphasis on trauma. And I've done like hundreds of hours of trainings, and like I've worked in maternal mental health, I've worked in infant mental health. I'm not a therapist, but I've taken these trainings, and I wouldn't be able to get to where I was if I didn't have all that. So like a lot of these people on Instagram, and they're trying to sell how to heal, right? It's like, let me sell you this package. And I don't try to sell anything. I'm just like, I figured out what worked for me. And really what it is piecing together my life experiences with some understanding, a decent understanding of like some modalities and healing processes, and like, like therapeutic modalities, and then also this kind of like holistic approach. And what I've learned is when I just trust what I know, but when I say when I trust what I know, it's also when it comes from like, I took a training like that. I read a book like that. I talked to my mom one time, and she told me about it. So I take what I know and I apply it, and I find that I kind of found what works for me. And now what I'm doing is no longer investing all this like attention and energy into like these hobbies that are external of me, and I'm invested into myself. And it's this self-care, right? But it's such bullshit, like self-care. Go take a bubble bath and a face mask, right? No, it's not about that.
Yeah.
When I started self-caring, it was literally to not die. And that's where I think I made the super like this hardcore switch. And I've also trained my whole life very intensely in everything I do, right? So it was literally, I mean, I'll tell the story like as quick as I can, because I think it's a big part of how I got to where I'm at. My whole life was kind of falling apart. I was stuck in this fight mode. I was not a very pleasant person. I really wanted to get fixed. I wanted to fix myself. So I dove into therapy. I dove into this particular therapy called EMDR that talks about trauma and uses a different approach, and it's supposed to work. And I remember at that point saying, I'm gonna trust it, it's gonna work, it's gonna fix my brain, it's gonna rewire my brain and fix me. And I did it so hard and so quick that threw me for a loop, and it really threw me and it dysregulated me. So I started messing up with work, I started getting short at home, and I just had to like take a step back and like, holy shit, I'm having like a mental breakdown. Luckily, my job noticed it. It's a mental health agency, an amazing mental health agency. And they said, take some time off, get better, and come back. And I did. And when I did, I was just like, holy shit, I'm going to lose my job. Everything is done. Like, I got in a fight, right? They're over here saying, we're going to help you. Go get help. I'm like, no. We're going to help you. I was like, no. So I said, okay, I'm going to trust it. And I went to get help. I went to this 3-month outpatient mental health program. And I went there for like 5 days a week, a couple hours a day. And I learned a lot. And I decided that I would be open to the process. And I was a very arrogant man. I was a very arrogant know-it-all, had all the trainings, had all the certificates. So I was like, okay, I've done these trainings, I've done this. And I was like, no. After the first week, I had a very, very, very big push in this fight. It was still in me, right? And I didn't want to be there. So I literally got very suicidal. Like, I was like, I am going to do it tonight. And then something told me like, no, you're not going to do it. Like, do something. Like you have this opportunity, you have your insurance somehow paid for this awesome program for you. So trust it. And then if you do the work and it doesn't work, then kill yourself. And like I remember hearing that, like, do the work, and if it doesn't work, then kill yourself.
At least try. Like, that's awesome.
So I did it, and like it was a bunch of stuff that I wasn't open to at first. It was yoga, it was like breath work. They did a sound bath. Of course, there was like talk therapy. At first I was very like, I know more than these therapists, I know blah, blah. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't know shit about breath work. I don't know shit about yoga. Like, let me just try it out. So the very first week I did this breath work, which is like breathing into your belly, breathing into your chest. It's just a style of breath. It's just a technique. I did it for about an hour. And what happens is for me, it induced a panic attack. And I'm laying there in a room full of people and it induced a panic attack. And I remember like tears were coming down my face. I was shaking. I felt panicky. I'm thinking like, what the heck? Why am I doing this? I'm around with strangers. And then all of a sudden I felt this amazing sense of warmth just engulf my body and just tell me like, you're safe. You're okay. You're whole. And I'm thinking like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, oh shit. Like I'm making myself have a panic attack, but I'm in control. I'm in control of my breath. Normally when I have panic attacks, I get really short, like before I would get like really like tight in my chest. I would like kind of like get hunched up. My main practice, right? That's like how I regulate my nervous system. But the power that I learned in that session is when I realized that it's not just up here. It's not just knowing the shit. It's not just being able to say, I'm going to wake up every morning and have a bubble bath and do a face mask. It's like being able to do that and then be present in your body to experience what you experience and let go of all that stress and anxiety that you're holding on to. Mm-hmm. And through breath work, that's what I was able to do. I was able to connect my mind to my heart, like literally my body. I was able to say, oh, I'm really stressed out up here because my whole body, I'm stuck in a fight mode. That's my nervous system, right? Shooting off all crazy. And like, I was very reactive. I was a very reactive man. And in this moment, I realized I have a very powerful thing. I have this thing that I can activate my nervous system and throw myself into a fight mode at will. And that's a powerful thing to have, because when I'm in fight mode, I'm sharp, I'm focused, I'm very energetic, I'm ready to go. So I've learned that when I start my day off with this breath work, and I had a practice, I've been doing my practice every day for like about a year and a half now. And I started looking forward to it. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. Like in the beginning, I'd wake up at 5 a.m. I'll set my alarm. Now I just wake up at 4:35 a.m. naturally. And I look forward to coming to my office and doing my practice, my breath work, doing my stretches, my yoga, listening to music, and doing my self-care. And that's the biggest thing. But to get there, I had to trust the process. And also to be able to navigate through the strong feelings that breath work would bring up, I had to know and understand all this stuff about childhood trauma and know that I'm safe and know how I can reparent myself. So it's a very complex thing for me, but it just kind of worked. It naturally just worked out. And that's when I was like, holy shit, if I just trust my body, it wakes up at 4:30 every morning and says, go to your office and get breath work in. And now I look forward to it. And sometimes those breathwork sessions bring up emotions and bring up stuff and stored trauma in my body. And I might feel energy and you can get into all this Reiki stuff. I don't say it's bullshit at all, because I've experienced something that if I try to classify it, it'll get real spiritual and kooky, but it's just me. It works for me. It's my nervous system firing off, or it's my chakras. It doesn't matter, it works.
It works. Yeah.
It might not work for you, but it works for me. But the way I see it is I'm able to reset my nervous system every morning. And that actually just kicks me into the sense of like peace and love, because I'm able to get to a place every morning where I'm in control, but not in control like I'm controlling the day, where I'm saying I am safe and my body actually believes it. And that's a powerful thing to do to start your day every morning. So that's like my biggest practice. So that's kind of what I do now, but to kind of get through all the other stuff, like crying is also part of it. Like you mentioned crying. When you do this breath work, it's not beautiful, or I'm saying like, it's not blissful. There's times where it was actually months and weeks where I've cried every single day, because I'm releasing all of this hurt. And that's okay, because it's not my hurt to carry anymore. And I tell myself that. I give myself affirmations. But crying, I've got very comfortable with crying. And it's funny because like people are like, weren't you embarrassed? I'm like, no, like when I tell you I cry, how does it make you feel? I don't know, it's kind of weird. But it doesn't feel okay. So I hope that you can find a place where you're okay with crying, or if you feel like you want to like release or step into a place where you're safe enough to cry. Like I hope that you have the space and place to do it. I'm very blessed to have that. I'm not living in a house full of roommates. I'm not, I have my own space. But I think that's really part of it, is feeling safe in yourself and being able to connect like what you know up here to what you feel in here.
I like to say that crying is like sneezing in regards to, we need to let it out. And, not just with boys, with girls too, we tell a lot of people like toughen it up. And like you mentioned, we all have mental health issues. Everybody, there's not one person that doesn't, but we put on a fake smile, right? Like we're so fake. And I'm a crier too, Alex. I'm very sensitive also. I cry I can cry if it's good or bad, but I allow it. And there was a time where I was a high school teacher and I would tell the students, just because I knew, I was like, it's going to happen, right? Like when you're a crier, it's like you need to toss embarrassing out, because I want to let it out, because I respect myself. I honor myself. And, I remember meeting some students that were like, oh, I can't cry even if I wanted to. And that's just extreme suppression. I'm just like, you need to let it out some way. Like you were saying, that you did a lot of physical combat. For you, that was very therapeutic, because when you are in fight or flight, you still have all of this energy that you need to let out. And we don't. I do. I do now. because I'm like, oh, F it, like I want to be healthy. I want to take care of myself. And I know that crying is a normal reaction. I know that some people are more sensitive than others, including males. And so that's awesome that you cry. Weird, but really, really powerful.
It honestly, like, I think I hope I'm at the end of that. I don't hope anything, but like, it's been a huge part of my journey. And it's almost like I'm grieving all of the realizations that like, I thought I was broken for the longest time. I got into this profession just by kind of chance. And now I look back, I'm like, wow, it's like my life is too perfect not to just be this perfect life. Like, I'm like, wow, how did I end up like working with preschoolers when some of my biggest trauma was in those years? And I worked with preschoolers, and I remember working with, and I was a badass teacher. I loved preschool. Like, it's awesome. I remember telling like the kids, like, like, I want you to have a safe space. Like, I want all the kids to want to come to school and feel safe. And I want kids to like, not ever think like I hate school, because that was me, right? So like I got into these professions by chance, but I had a chance like for those 3 or 4 years I taught preschool to like relive a little bit of my childhood, right? So like to show these kids what I wanted. And this is before I started this like healing journey, which is really popular now on Instagram. Like, algorithms are telling me I'm right on track. These things. So this is before all that stuff, right? I got into preschool, and I kind of like, okay, I was working with preschoolers, and I started working with parents. Because like, okay, working with parents, that's how you make the change, right? You work with the parents. And then I worked with like moms, and I got into like home visiting programs where I was actually working with pregnant moms and moms of new infants, and taking all these trainings in maternal mental health and trainings on postpartum depression. And I'm over here having my own child, right? And like I'm experiencing this, and I'm seeing it from an academic lens, and I'm like, I know this stuff. I got the hours, I got the certificates, and I'm taking trainings, I should be okay. And then I see my wife struggling, right? And I start struggling, and I'm over here like diagnosing, like, oh, you should do this, and the DSM-5 says this, and I was so detached. I've shared this example before with someone. It was as if like I had 10,000 hours of helicopter training, but it was like all YouTube videos.
Ah, good analogy.
So like I have watched 10,000 hours of YouTube trainings, but they're all on YouTube of like helicopter, And then when I took this therapy, did this therapy EMDR, it broke the dam. It broke the facade. It broke the face that I was able to hold on to when I was not okay. Because I've never been okay. I've been suicidal most of my life. But when I did EMDR, it brought up all these memories and the floodgates.
What's MDR? Was that the breathing technique you mentioned earlier?
Well, the breathing technique is called breath work, but EMDR is, I'm going to read it just so I don't mess it up, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So that's a trauma type therapy. It's a modality when you kind of use your eye movement or tapping your hands to make neural pathways in your brain. It's really science.
Awesome.
But I never really looked into it because I've always looked into everything I did, and I always wanted to dissect it. I always wanted it. But EMDR is one thing I said, no, I'm not going to look into it. I'm not going to do research. I'm just going to trust the process. And when I did, it worked really well to make me feel. And when I started feeling, it got really scary. Wow. So this was 2 years ago, right? Before the pandemic and all that stuff. Perfect timing, actually, because right in February, March of the pandemic when it hit, that's right when I was finishing up my program, my mental health program. And then it said, stay home for a year and work on yourself. And I was like, hell yeah. Anyways, so when I did EMDR, it released these floodgates of these emotions that I was like, holy shit, I didn't know I was so angry. I didn't know I had this, and I was not able to put on this mask anymore. So what I felt like is I was looking at all these YouTube tutorials on how to fly a helicopter. And I was like, I got this. Like, shit, I've watched all the videos, right? Like, I know what's up, right? And then all of a sudden, after doing EMDR, I blinked my eyes open. And I opened my eyes, and I was flying in a helicopter. And I'm like, holy shit, this is like legit. This is a legit helicopter. And then I look down, and I'm like above a city. And then I'm barreling down. That's how it felt. It felt like I was going to die. I had to do something or I would die. And when I was barreling down this helicopter, just because I thought like, no, I have 10,000 hours of trainings. Like, I have this, I know it. So in my metaphor, I used like, I was able to finagle the helicopter just enough to get a little bit of help to where I needed to go. And that was actually getting admitted into like this program, right? This mental health program. And what I told myself is like, all of this training I have has to be worth something. It has to be worth something. Just because it doesn't work for me and it hasn't worked, no, it has to be worth something, because I put so much I put so much value on evidence-based. I put so much value on schooling, academics, and DSM-5 and psychology. I used to put so much value. I say used to. I have plenty of value. But I was like, no, it has to be worth something. And what it was worth, it was enough to just let me know I'll be okay. That I can't give up because I have all this training. Like, if me, a man who works in the field, is feeling so much suffering that I want to take my own life, and I can't navigate this mental health, world to get help, like, damn, I feel really, really, really bad, and really bad for the people I work with, the people I represent, the people that I connect to resources. So I kind of just took it as like, no, I could do this, right? And those 10,000 hours of helicopter trainings from YouTube gave me enough information that what I needed to land safely to get help. But the get help part was the hard part. Yeah. And once I went to help, I was like, holy shit, I made it. I'm here. I'm alive. Well, let me just keep trying to be alive. And it was just that. It was once I realized I have this chance to kind of connect my mind to my brain, or my mind to my heart, where I actually have a little more control of my impulses, of my being reactive. Then I started being able to slow down my thoughts, and that was through meditation, daily meditation. Breath work is a form of meditation. So when you do breath work, you will you can get into a very deep meditative state. And often in these deep meditative states, I will experience very profound thoughts and stuff like that. And I know it's accessing or science and YouTube. I say YouTube, I don't know. It's whatever I do, right? So it's like DMT. I don't know if you know ayahuasca and all that stuff, how people have like mushrooms. So I can experience through breath work, and it's very difficult for me, but I can if I do it enough, and if I'm very in a good state, I can experience these altered consciousness.
Wow.
I didn't think I was crazy. Most people feel that and they go, holy shit, I'm losing my fucking mind. And I said, hell no, I want more of this. And I kept doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And then I got really good at it. And it's changed my life. Breathwork is a very big part of my life, but I don't follow any particular modality. I just kind of do what works for me. Because I've had like the year of kind of playing with it, and the quarantine, I've been very blessed, and I stayed home, worked from home. I have like like a nice backyard. I can do yoga all day. So like, I know my reality is not the reality of most, but I know that my reality before I had this opportunity, I was suffering, and I wanted to get help, but I just didn't know how. And it was kind of the perfect storm that got me to where I'm at. So I don't know how I could help others. I wish I could help everyone. I want everyone to experience what I'm experiencing. And part of the reason I'm drawn to you guys is you guys are doing the same thing. You guys are experiencing.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Shift, and like, whoa, there's so much more than just this, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We're both on our own journey. And I think that's what like attracted us to you, is because we're emitting that energy. We want that. We're trying to heal ourselves. And me and Cindy always talk about that. Like, we're in our 30s right now. And I said, you mentioned your, like, this aha moment for you was 2 years ago. And I feel like mine was a year ago, and I was 31. No, I was 30. I'm 31 now. I was 30. And I'm like, you think, like we were taught our whole lives at this age, we should have shit figured out. And it's like at 30 is when my aha moment hit. And I'm like, I had just graduated college. I kept saying, when I'm done with school, it's going to just fall into place. Like, why am I still stressed out? And then I just started my like healing journey a year ago, and I still am barely at the tip of the iceberg, like I'm unpacking so much. And it's like everything you just said, I want to get there too. And since I'm in the social services, I always told myself, how can I help people when I'm not healed? I already know that. And that still resonates with me. Like, I could get a little emotional if I keep thinking or talking about it, because I want to. I think this is part of my journey, is to help people, but I haven't quite figured out my whole experience, but I'm on the journey, like I think I'm paving my road to healing.
Yeah. I also, sorry, I just wanted to say that with the clients that we work with, I think there's like a thing that I'm missing where I'm like, why did I, you know what I mean? I decide that I wanted to feel better or end the suffering. Or you, Alex, so how did you decide after being suicidal for so long? There's that, right? Because you have to also allow others, and you can't make anybody do anything. even when you see them suffering and I'm like, I really want to help. And it's like, you can't, they have to you can offer them resources and walk them through their appointment. You know what I mean? Like all that stuff, but none of it will work because it's a lot of work unless they decide. So that's something that I'm still a little bit like, you know, I have to kind of like let it go.
Yeah, I agree. I worked very closely with families and women and you know, someone that works in social services, we can't fix people, but we get into this field because we have our own baggages and we think we need to be fixed and we think we're broken, and we're not broken. We're all hurting. Everyone's hurting. But it's hard when you want to really help genuinely and it doesn't work. And unfortunately in social services, a lot of people get jaded, and that's like a pet peeve of mine, seeing with like people that are really, really jaded. But when it comes down to it, like now I don't work directly with clients. And I honestly like think now that I have this new perspective of as of right now, and as far as the agency I work for, I wouldn't work directly with clients because now I have this like, yeah, like evidence-based practices are very valid, but there's other options. And like, I no longer am like buy the DSM-5 book. Like it's challenged my paradigm so much that I'm okay with looking at big picture stuff. So I work big picture, but also when I was in it, I remember thinking like taking home the weight of these families' stories and their struggles. And it took a while to be able to learn how to let that go. And I remember I had a colleague tell me like, there are stories and they're valid, but they're not your stories to hold on to. And I thought that's kind of like, that's, no, I got to honor these people. I got to help them. And it's like, you can help them, but like you help them by holding an open hands and giving them space. And unfortunately, it's our job. We can't just go out and buy them, you know, with groceries with our money if they're struggling and stuff. But we are humans and we want to help people. We're just trying to work in this system, right? Where we got to get these boxes checked and all that stuff. So for me, it's really, it's shifted where I don't work directly with families like that. I think if I did, it'd be a little different now. But I think where you're at right now is you really do. You kind of have to, Jessica mentioned, like, it's about like, okay, if you're going to approach these hard topics and this trauma in crisis these families are working with, you have to kind of be aware of how it brings up what's inside of you.
Exactly.
And when that brings up inside of you, you have to be able to aware to like, okay, can I hold space for this family and still hold space for myself?
Yeah, that's very important. I just wanted to very quickly, Jess, you were going to say something. Was it the DSM-5?
Yes. You keep mentioning Alex, but I just wanted to say like that book is the Social Work Bible, right?
Yeah.
Is it a blue book? Because I think people reference it.
I thought it was a psychology.
It's a psychology,
okay.
diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders. So it's basically, if you read it, it'll say, if you do this, this, and this, you have this mental disorder, right? So like all the, you know, bipolar disorder, all that stuff's in there. If you read it long enough, and a lot of people when they're in schooling, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm diagnosing myself with everything. And I've done that, and I've been guilty of that. But when I look at it really, like all encompassing, it's trauma. I can relate to like maybe having complex post-traumatic stress disorder. If you look into like the CPTSD world of like childhood abuse and neglect, like I wasn't neglected, maybe, I don't know. But I was, you know, that's why I feel that I have all these particular triggers. And now because of my breathwork practice, because of like my daily self-care practice, I'm literally like, I just wake up 5:30 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning, and I just hang out with myself. I do my breathwork, I do yoga, I do stretches, I paint, I sometimes listen to music, like sometimes I cry, sometimes I listen to music to elicit emotion. If I'm feeling particularly like stuck, like why am I feeling stuck? I do a lot of like reflection. So I do that every day. And when I do that, like that makes me feel in the moment kind of crazy. Like in those 2 hours every morning between 5 and 7, I feel a little crazy. Like DSM-5, very crazy, right? But when 7:30 rolls around, 8:30 rolls around, or 7:30 when I go back into my house, because I'm in the garage, I know that I'm the best dad. I know that I'm the best husband because I've sifted through all the stuff, the leftover energy that was in me, the traumas that might have come up from whatever trigger I might have had. Sometimes my mornings are very like emotional and I cry a lot. Sometimes I just hang out and laugh. But that's my key. That's what keeps me balanced. And I've always heard about people saying like a morning routine, and I didn't really get it until I started doing it. And like, it's something that I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to change this. Like the routine will change, but waking up early morning and having 2 hours to myself every single day before anyone could bother me, I think that's what keeps me balanced. But how do you tell someone to do that when they're really depressed?
Yeah.
You know, they're not going to do it. They can't. They physically can't.
They can't.
Their body
So this brings me up because we're kind of coming to the ending part. How crazy is that? Because I feel like, you know, this is up our alley, Alex. As you know, we can talk about these things and it's just like, whoa, that's crazy. So I wanted to talk about support systems and then the lack thereof. So I wanted to ask you, I read this thing that said, you're better able to bounce back from a traumatic event if you have a healthy support system. So I think a lot about my daughter, like I parallel parent. And so sometimes, natural worries, like, I don't know. And it's all the control. I want her to see life through my lens. And I'm like, don't do that. So there's a lot going on and she's little. But at the end of the day, I know that if she ever experiences something traumatic, I know that she has me and someone who's, very conscious about, hey, it's okay. Or I do a lot of breath work with her because she gets overtired. So she, when she is overtired, any little thing is going to set her off and she starts getting disrespectful and she starts getting, and I'm like, do you need to take a deep breath? And, I don't know why I ask it. No, she doesn't. But then it gets to the point where I'm like, I'm about to lose it. And so we go to the bathroom or, wherever, and I have to calm down because she can feel it. Kids can feel the tension and I can be like, take a deep breath. I take it with her. I start feeling better right away. It takes her a little bit longer. But we have coping mechanisms where kids grow up, all of us, we didn't grow up with any type of coping mechanisms. So my question is, what did your support system look like? Because you went from being suicidal for so many years to saying, all right, I'll do the work. And that's what, that connection, I'm like, whoa. Yeah.
So I think the connection was breath work. That was literally the brain to the body. It's not simple, but that's what I feel where that switch was flipped. As far as my support system, I have my wife who has been by my side for 13 years. We've been married for like 6 years. But we were struggling because I was putting through hell. Like I was not in a good place, right? But she was still by my side. And when I told her I was losing it, when I told her like I'm gonna lose my job, when I came in all panicking, she was still there for me. And even though it was like it could have been like, this dude's crazy, I'm out. She was there for me. She helped me get to that particular mental health outpatient program. She did a lot of that stuff for me. So that support system was the concrete support in times of need. I needed something. I didn't need just a high five. I just didn't need a hug. I needed something. I needed intervention. Intervention. So that was, at that sense, that was like the perfect timing because I literally at that point was making a plan for suicide. And part of my mental health and all of my issues were very damaging, I feel, and hurtful to the people around me. But I had unconditional love for my mom, and my mom was such a support system through all of this. There was times where I was going through the thick of it, where I was just like going through. I go like this because I Googled all that shit, just like everyone else, right? What's going on with me? Oh, you're just going through a dark night of the soul. Fuck whatever, right? You've probably done it. If you haven't, you'll get there. So I did this stuff, and like in my worst of my worst, like when my mom would come over and I was like, Mom, why did you beat me? Like, why did you do it to me? Like, what? I would just spit poison at her. Poison. Like, I feel so bad saying it now. But before, like, this is right before I went there, I was like really struggling. But my mom kept showing up. My mom kept bringing me food. My mom kept bringing me groceries. My mom kept doing my dishes. It pissed my wife off because we were in different cultures, right? But my mom, I was her baby, right? But that's what I needed. I needed that unconditional love. I needed to know that I was loved even at my worst. And that's what we do with our children. And I want to mention this. Like I've spent a lot of years as a parent coach, a lot of years as a teacher, and I'm a pretty fucking great dad. And it takes so much effort. But I have stepped into my awesome ability of being a dad. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing because when you have your kid that's dysregulated and throwing tantrums and they're 5 years old and you just want to be like, ugh! And I did last night. And it's only because it's actually no excuses, but I was in a lot of pain because I just got over surgery. But this is what she told me. I was like, Eleanor, why can't you just listen? She goes, she's 5.5. Dad, because you taught me how to scream. Remember when you used to be mean and scream? And you do yoga, but I don't like yoga. And you don't scream anymore, so you need to go do yoga. And my 5.5-year-old told me this. So I know what I'm doing is working. And that's why I keep doing it. That's why I keep doing it. Because I know I'm breaking a cycle. And it sounds all dramatic and shit, right? But I am breaking a cycle. And, my wife didn't grow up with a similar background as I did. To her, all of my traumas are like, oh my goodness, like what, they hit you? Like to me, it's like, yeah, like shit. If you get hit with the belt, you got hit with the hanger, you got hit with the whatever was next to mom, you got hit with, yeah. So
chocolate culture is real, and
I don't want that.
Same. And I think all three of us don't hit our kids, even though my kid is at the age where I'm like, I see where and why and how easy it is to hit them. But I'm like, I don't want to do it either. Like I have to step away from her and take deep breaths to like control it, because they're just testing their boundaries with us. And yeah, that's really inspiring, Alex. Like kudos to you, and a lot of males in our culture don't honor that father figure role. They're like, oh, well, let the wives take it. And I'm just here for like playtime and that's it, but kids, little boys and girls, like get so much value from having that parent presence.
Yeah. And really, I mean, my daughter is my biggest motivation. And a lot of the times, and I've changed a lot over the past 2 years, year and a half. I've completely transformed. Like I've changed my life. I've changed my diet. I've changed, like, I look completely different. Like, and as a parent, I've changed as well. And I look at her and I tell myself, like, if I just continue to be the best man for myself, because I want my daughter to see this. I want my daughter to know that this is what a good man looks like. This is what a good man treats his wife like. This is what a good man treats his daughter like. And it's none of this, like, I'm like this dude that, gets bossed around by his wife. No, it's not about that. I have so much love to give because I literally go hang out with whatever the universe is every morning, right? Because I do my breath work and I get this infinite amounts of sense of love, and it's unlimited. So I can give this unconditional love to my family. I can give this unconditional love to anyone that crosses my path.
Yeah.
But I can do that because I've had a life where I've done a lot of shit, and I've been that bad guy. I'm not the bad guy. I've been the misunderstood guy who hurts people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel as if I need to be so protective anymore, because I think I was telling Cindy through DMs, like, like I was a macho man. I was like a machismo. I was like this tough guy. I was like this guy that was bragging about all this tough stuff I did. But it's funny because I always worked helping people. I was the bouncer at the same time I was teaching preschool, like, so I tell these people, like, tell this because I'm not scared to be called like soft. I'm not scared to be called sensitive. I'm not scared to be like, oh, you cry, what a wuss. So what? I'm also everything else I was. Yeah. I'm just this person that has more of a depth to me and more of like this range of emotions that I can express and live in. And if you choose to live in this sense of where I am unconditional love, that's what I tell myself every morning. It's a pretty good place to live. But I also recognize it's because I'm so blessed because everything in my life has kind of played out to this point.
That's good that you can see it that way.
Yeah.
That you are blessed. And you're describing like a freeing feeling that I feel the same. And my ego death or whatever, like the DMT experience happened for me as it does. I've read when I gave birth, like when I became a mom. I just was like, we're all connected. And I never saw humans the same because I always saw people as like this innocent child. We all grew up as this innocent, vulnerable child. And there's so many, I just got it. I'm like, oh my God, we're so sensitive for so vulnerable for so long. And we do all the opposite, right? Because we're still evolving. We're still trying to figure it out as humans. But I can resonate with you saying like, just that, like you could just, that's how I am. I'm so protective. I do so much self-care now. Like I'm just obsessed with with healing, and I think we all are at the tip of the iceberg. And I think that's important because it might sound like, okay, we got it now, we're healed. No, not yet, not at all. But even beginning, right? Even just, what is it like, giving yourself, like saying like, okay, what's that word? Like I give up,
like you're waving the surrender flag. You're like
with your ego, I think it is, right? With saying like, okay, I'm going to forgive my mom. There's no way I can heal. Surrender. Yeah. There's no way I can heal without giving yourself grace. Okay. Yeah. A lot of my troubles were with my mom as well, because she used to hit us a lot too. And So, you know, I struggled a few years with that. Like, no, that's not cool. She's still mean. And my mom doesn't have that loving side of her. It's always been just, and then she opened up a lot when I had my daughter, and she used to tell me how she was physically abused, out of this world type. We got spanked. You know, you can imagine. And so, yeah, I just resonate with that freeing part. And I want to spread that to say that if you are suffering, if you are suicidal, if you are depressed, it's definitely easier said than done, but it does free you, right? It just frees the shackles of like, oh, okay, I'm vulnerable. Yes, we are. I'm sensitive. Yes, we are. That's normal. I was hurt as a child. I didn't feel safe as a child. And that's why I have this shit in my head, and I can get help. I can end the suffering. So that's what I love, is that you were suicidal, because we meet people, right, that you're like, dang, I've never been suicidal, so I can't even imagine that level of hurt. But even you found the solution. You were open. So I think that's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share my story. I mean, I really, like you said, once you kind of get this freeing feeling, all you want to do is shout it to the world.
Yeah.
Because I know what it felt like. I know what it was like to suffer. I know, man, it sucks. It really sucks. And you know, I can look at people and see that sometimes they're suffering, and they'll open up just a little bit, and you can't tell them you can't tell them how to get fixed. You can't tell them, but it's just like, if they want to do some steps, you can offer some advice. You can give them a little bit of your experience, and that's what's powerful. It's sharing your experience. But yeah, thank you guys. Like, I think you guys are doing awesome. The perspectives you guys are bringing, it's true, because you guys are gonna talk to people that aren't talking about this heavy hitting stuff.
Yeah.
I can talk about it like this, and it makes people uncomfortable sometimes. But I'm so comfortable in it because I'm fucking excited that I'm alive. Like, I was done. And then now I'm here. So to me, it's like, I'm ready to keep living. And if living for me is like just being this vessel of unconditional love to help people, it's a pretty good job. I mean, I have a job where I help people and get paid for it. But like, this is what I mean. In my Instagram, I have like 300 followers, you know. But like, if I can inspire someone I went to high school with, like literally, I haven't talked to this person in like 20 years, and they're like liking my post and saying, I'm like, cool, that person I went to high school with, I inspired them. I helped them any way I can. But you know, it's just something that I'm happy to do. And
I had a lot of questions. We're almost done, but I'd love to bring you back on, because I love that you're open about your suicidal experiences. And that's another thing that we haven't touched on. And I think that's very prevalent amongst men, because, you know, as studies show, both women and men think about suicide, but the ones more likely to complete, or I don't want to use the wrong, you know, words, but the ones more likely to actually, succeed. We're not supposed to say succeed.
Die by suicide.
Die by suicide. There you go. It's men, right? It's men. Like, women will attempt it, but we do it in a way that we're leaving space, right? For like, okay, we're open to maybe feeling better, right? But males, there's not too much coping, is what I've come to gather from my observation. Is just like, there's no way out, because they told you keep it all in, and you've been doing that for so many years that now you're just so, right? Like, you're like, no, I think suicide is the best option. And so I'd love to bring you on to focus just on that topic. So if you're open.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in it by any means. Actually, one of the times that I had a mental break was actually after a suicidal ideation training at work. I had to take like a couple weeks off because I was like, that's too much. But you know, it's weird because like, I was in it. I'm over here feeling those feelings and going to training, going, how do I identify suicidal ideation?
Right.
You know? So I'm happy to talk about it in my experience. From, you know, even in the mental health field, like, you know, I have some experience on it, but it is a very serious topic, and I'm not a therapist, so I don't go through and say I have all these credentials. But you know, it is something. If anyone's ever feeling suicidal, please reach out. If you feel someone is maybe being suicidal, ask them. Like, don't pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
You know, I know there's a big. I don't know the statistics. I'm not going to pretend to make up numbers, but they say like, if you ask someone, they think it's going to be more likely that they committed, and it's actually the opposite. It's that they want to be seen, you know, like, people want to be recognized and know that they're not alone. And when you're in depression, when you're in like a very deep depression, or you have anxiety, it feels so alone. And to have someone see you and not just see your mask, and have someone say, I see you, like, are you okay? That's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to come back and talk about that, because I would love to.
I think that's just a different, and because you're open about it, you're a male, and not as therapists, because we say it all the time, like some of these topics are just, it doesn't have to come from a textbook. It could just be as real as, shit, I thought about this for 10 years and I had a plan, and you know what I mean? Like all of that stuff is like, whoa. And if you're open, just how we're open when we tell some of our stories with our trauma, it is powerful. It is powerful, because back in the day, before, we had school and to sit down in front of a teacher, learning was through storytelling. And so I strongly believe in that. And so thank you again for sharing your story, for coming on to the Primas podcast. My daughter's saying, tell them I'm recording. We're live. Anyways, any last closing remarks, Prima?
No, I think this was such a good topic, and I can't believe the hour flew by, Alex. Like I was just listening to you talk, and like I was zoned in, and I was just listening to your story. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time and you're being vulnerable, because it's going to be inspiring.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're signing off. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Follow Alex. We're going to have his information out there so that you can see a little bit more. If you know anybody who might resonate, if you know males in your family, your partners, friends, he's leaving the door open. He's saying, like, look at my stuff, look at my work. And that is powerful, just to share that it is rough and it is a journey, but you become a better person to those around you for it. So, all right, everybody, thanks so much. We love you. Leave us comments, feedback, like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you. Bye.